Hello, and welcome to Unit 7, the project preparation stage. By this stage, the client has accepted the quote and the project has moved into the planning and preparation stage, in which the source files will be processed for use within the CAT tool environment, and localization kits will be prepared and sent out to translators. In this unit, we'll consider the use of features such as pseudo-translation as a means to anticipating layout or technical difficulties which might be encountered when creating the target translation files. We'll also consider term extraction as a way of finalizing the client-specific glossaries, and we'll look at the leveraging of translation memories using a feature known as pre-translation. The aim of the pre-processing stage is to ensure that the documents and text can be moved as smoothly as possible through the process of localization. This entails attempting to anticipate any layout, formatting, or technical issues which might be encountered when recompiling translated files for delivery to the client. Pre-processing may involve converting the file format into a localization-ready format, as some file types cannot be processed in their native formats. For example, Adobe InDesign and unstructured FrameMaker files, which are both used in desktop publishing, need to be converted to their interchange formats, INX and MIF respectively, before they can be processed any further. As we saw in Unit 3 when we considered different file types, PDF files should also be converted to a more editable format, such as a Word document, before beginning any more work on them. Standalone CAT tools provide file filters which may be able to convert the PDF or even use optimal character recognition, or OCR, to extract the translatable text during the import process. However, this will very much depend on the file itself. A scanned image of handwriting is likely to be much more difficult to extract and convert than a PDF created from word processing software. Once the files have been converted, they can be imported into the CAT tool to produce the required XLIF format, before the localization engineer analyzes them further. Whenever text is translated from one language to another, the length of the two translated documents is likely to differ. With some language pairs, the text may expand, and with others it may contract. This is down to such factors as grammar, syntax, lexis, semantics, and terminology differences between languages. Subject matter can also influence the degree of expansion or contraction. For example, translating from German to English can lead to an expansion of 5 to 40%, depending on the subject matter. Looking at the example here, we can see a clear difference in length in the English words Black Forest Gatto and the German source term. When German is translated into English, this will likely create more white space, or space between words, which will alter the formatting and layout requirements between the source and target texts. A highly technical text in this language pair will be full of terminology, and this will likely expand more than an academic text. As we can see in the table here, in the case of Japanese, each character used may take up a space equivalent to the width of 2 Latin-based characters, so the contraction factor of a Japanese into English translation could be as high as 55%, while translating English into Japanese could result in an expansion factor of up to 60%. The impact of this expansion or contraction often leads to a requirement for desktop publishing work in order to correctly adjust elements on the page to better accommodate the translated text. For example, in software localization, this might mean that dialog boxes need to be resized to accommodate the translation, or in websites, the layout of images on the page may need to be adjusted. Furthermore, different languages may use different fonts to represent characters on the page. The font used for Chinese characters may not be well suited to displaying English letters, and they may need to be substituted. Localization tools use font mapping to perform this substitution automatically, and users can specify in advance which font should be adjusted and which font to use for particular language variants. It's important to check in advance that any special characters, such as accented characters, which will appear in the localized text, can be displayed properly in the chosen font. To minimize the amount of engineering work required after translation, CAT tools provide a feature called pseudo-translation, which can be used to create a simulation of a translated document that makes allowances for the degree of text expansion and contraction, while also checking that special characters can be displayed correctly. This feature allows the project manager and the localization engineer to ascertain how the document will look once it is translated, and to make an assessment of how much desktop publishing will be required after translation in order to properly adjust the formatting and layout. The output from this feature can help when planning a project, as it allows a project manager to set more realistic estimates and expectations for the completion of the project. During a pseudo-translation, the software will insert new characters that are typical to the target language. It will change the length of each string or segment based on statistically calculated expansion or contraction figures, and it will mark the start and end of strings or segments so that it is easier for the user to see if the text fits into the allocated space or whether it has been truncated, even without them having any knowledge of the target language. In the absence of pseudo-translation features within a CAT tool, a similar test of layout and formatting could be conducted using only machine translation matches. However, this is potentially a less cost-effective option if pseudo-translation can be carried out at no extra cost within the CAT tool. The use of machine translation for this purpose is likely to incur extra cost, as machine translation subscriptions may typically charge per character, where characters also include white space. In the interest of quality, client terminology should be defined early on in the project. If a client prefers the word zona to be translated as area and not zone, then storing this term and its target language equivalent in the glossary ensures that all translators working on the project use the same translation throughout. This improves consistency and translation quality. The client may be able to provide an approved glossary of terms, but if not, a terminology list should be created and translated during the preparation stage. This can be done without a CAT tool by opening the source file, selecting important terms by hand, and manually typing them into a text document. If you are translating without a CAT tool, these words could then be added to the default or custom dictionary in word processing software for proofing purposes. Word will check that they have been spelled correctly. However, this is not effective for search and retrieval purposes when translating, nor is it possible to store any metadata along with these terms. Using localization technologies, terminology can be extracted either monolingually or bilingually from source files, translation memories, and other resource files. This can be done in a concordancing tool such as Sketch Engine, through an online service such as TermMine, or in some CAT tools using the terminology extraction feature. Monolingual extraction analyzes a text or a corpus to identify candidate terms, whereas a bilingual extraction will look at source text and their translations in order to identify potential terms and their equivalents. While the extraction is performed by the software, the potential candidates list must be checked and verified by a human translator or terminologist, so we can consider this process to be computer-assisted rather than fully automatic. Term extraction can be performed using linguistic and statistical approaches. With the linguistic approach, the software attempts to identify combinations of words that match particular part of speech patterns, such as an adjective plus a noun, or a noun plus another noun. However, such patterns may differ from one language to another. Therefore, the linguistic approach is used when working with monolingual term extraction, or when working with closely related languages. And for this reason, they are generally not integrated into translation memory systems. With the statistical approach, the software looks for repeated sequences of lexical items, and the user can customize certain settings before conducting the extraction, adjusting such parameters as the number of times a sequence must occur before it will be included in the extraction, or the number of words included within one term. This type of extraction is language independent, but it does produce a high degree of what is known as noise and silence. Noise describes sequences of lexical items which are presented as candidates but are not likely to be useful terms, whereas silence refers to the number of useful terms which were excluded from the term extraction. Owing to this, both linguistic and statistical approaches tend to be combined to produce a hybrid term extraction tool. Overall, term extraction is best carried out when the text for translation contain more than a minimum of 1,000 words. Otherwise, the software may struggle to identify useful terminology, and it may produce more noise. As well as extracting terminology, some CAT tools also provide an option to extract frequently occurring segments from the source text and to compile these in a separate file, so that they can be translated and approved in advance of sending the files to translators. These translated segments will be added to a translation memory, which can then be used to pre-translate the source text in order to speed up the translation stage and to ensure the overall quality of the translated output. Pre-translation as a preparatory stage is the process of leveraging a complete source text against a translation memory and automatically inserting the translations of exact matches found in the database. The result is a text which contains some pre-translated segments and some empty segments, which will then need to be translated by the human translator, or, if appropriate, by using a machine translation engine. This step of automatically inserting exact matches means that it is no longer necessary for the project manager to send out the agency's or the client's translation memory to those freelancers working on the text. Segments can be pre-translated and then locked so that the translator can see the segment for the purposes of context but cannot alter an already approved translation. Pre-translation is also helpful where there is a large amount of material to translate, as automatically inserting these translations in advance saves time for the translator during the translation stage, and it is a more cost-effective option for the language service provider. It is possible to lower the threshold at which matches will be inserted, allowing the CAT tool to insert fuzzy matches. However, it is not always advisable to lower the threshold too far, as this will mean that post-editing these fuzzy matches may become more time-consuming. Even the use of exact matches only for pre-translation can cause serious errors in the translated product, as any translation stored in the memory can then be replicated and eternalized due to the pre-translation process and auto-propagation features. Furthermore, even if a segment is an exact match, it may still be necessary to check that the segment is still the most appropriate for the given context. A translation memory stores translations in a way that is isolated from their context, and if the context changes, it may be necessary to edit the segment to suit the new context. Consequently, all exact matches inserted during the pre-translation task should still be checked by the human translator to ensure their appropriateness. Some CAT tools offer to extract segments that cannot be pre-translated and create a new file of untranslated segments which have been extracted from their context and no longer constitute a complete text. It is difficult to achieve a high-quality translation by translating only these segments out of context. As well as revision and review after translation, all projects require more quality checks to be performed to ensure that the translation is complete and well formatted, with the correct use of grammar, punctuation, and terminology. These checks should be done by the freelance translator, the translation agent, or the client may enlist the assistance of their own professional to check for accuracy and correct terminology. CAT tools offer adjustable QA settings, which can automate the process of checking for certain inaccuracies. The screenshot shows the list of QA options available in STL Trados Studio, which provides checks on language, layout, tags, and terminology. There are two severity levels to consider: warnings and errors. The CAT tool will flag up the error, irrespective of its severity, and the user will receive a message which gives a description of the error and severity level, and the linguist must decide on the appropriate course of action. In this screenshot, we can see that an error has been flagged to show that a tag has been deleted. As CAT tools use tags to mark out and recreate the formatting of the original source document, accidentally deleting one of these tags or tag pairs can cause the formatting to go awry in the final translation. This is flagged as an error by showing the white cross in a red circle shown alongside the segment in question, and it must be corrected, otherwise the document will either contain irregularities once exported, or it will not export at all from the CAT tool. A warning has also been given on this translation to show that the source and target segments are identical, which may mean either that the segment has been overlooked in translation or that the target is intended to be the same. A warning is, therefore, of lower severity than an error, and the tool uses a different symbol to draw the linguist's attention to the warning. The user can override this warning and will still be able to export the final target file. When carrying out quality assurance checks, it is important to check that the translation memory is still attached to the project, so that it can incorporate amendments as they are made. Otherwise, it is possible that any errors stored in the translation memory will be replicated throughout any future translations. Incorporating such amendments can be done very easily within a CAT tool. However, if the client's own expert has checked the files outside of the CAT tool environment, it's important to ensure that their changes are also recorded in the translation memory at the end of the project when the memory is maintained. Some CAT tools allow the user to split or glue files depending on the project. File splitting can be based on either the number of words or the number of segments to be allocated per individual translator. When localizing a website, there may be many small files, each containing only a segment or two at a time. It is time-consuming for a translator to have to open each file individually when translating, so it may be possible to glue these files together into one XLIF document. Similarly, when translating a larger text, such as a book chapter, it may be necessary to split the file between multiple translators in order to speed up the translation process and meet the required deadline. Again, some tools offer this feature, although in both cases the original files are left untouched, and the splitting or gluing of files is done on the XLIF document only. When splitting files between multiple translators, it is important to remember that this may impact on the overall quality level once the files have been merged again after translation. Each translator may have their own style of writing, and this can lead to inconsistencies in terms of lexical choices or style of writing. Where files have been split, it is therefore recommended that elements of style and consistency should be thoroughly and carefully checked during the revision stage. This stage ends once all the localization kits are ready to send out to freelance translators. In our next presentation, we'll consider the choice of methods available for sending files out, as well as looking at the features available when translating a file in the editor window of a CAT tool. You should now download the guided exploration questions from the Moodle course page and investigate the availability and level of customizability of each of the features discussed. Do all three of the cloud-based tools offer these features at the free-only subscription level? Do they offer these features at all? Try to test out the features where you can. A list of resources is included with your guided exploration questions to help you get started using some of these features. And, of course, don't forget to explore the help files and user manuals where necessary. This concludes our presentation on the project preparation stage. Please click Next to end the presentation and to return to the Moodle, where you'll be able to start the quiz once you're ready. This stage ends once all the localization kits are ready to send out to freelance translators. In our next presentation, we'll consider the choice of methods available for sending files out, as well as looking at the features available when translating a file in the editor window of a CAT tool. You should now download the guided exploration questions from the Moodle course page and investigate the availability and level of customizability of each of the features discussed. Do all three of the cloud-based tools offer these features at the free-only subscription level? Do they offer these features at all? Try to test out the features where you can. A list of resources is included with your guided exploration questions to help you get started using some of these features. And, of course, don't forget to explore the help files and user manuals where necessary. This concludes our presentation on the project preparation stage. Please click Next to end the presentation and to return to the Moodle, where you'll be able to start the quiz once you're ready.